All right, here we go. Today is Monday, March 19th, 2018, and this is episode 213 of the Defensive Security Podcast. My name is Jerry Bell, and joining me tonight, as always, is Mr. Andrew Callett.
You woke me up from my nap for this.
Well, you know, I'm having to TiVo Matlock, so we're all making sacrifices here.
All right. Well, how are you, sir?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. It's been an eventful day in the InfoSec world.
It has. Yes, it has.
With the whole Facebook CISO.
Yeah, that was big news.
And then, I mean, by the time this publishes, it'll probably be old news. But then, so the report was that Alex Stamos was leaving Facebook over disagreements on how they were handling election interference. But then Alex came out and said, no, that's not true. I'm still fully engaged at Facebook doing different things. So now I don't know what to believe.
Oh, man. You mean I may have to retract my tire fire GIF on Twitter?
Oh, I think, I don't know. It's a good question.
Anyway. So before we get into our fake news for the week, just a reminder that our comments and thoughts and opinions are ours and do not represent those of our employers. And also a big thank you to our Patreon donors. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. You guys are awesome. And if for some weird, twisted reason you want to join them, feel free.
Absolutely.
We appreciate every one of you.
That's right. That's right. So, anyway, getting into our news. This first story is a brief follow-up from something we talked about last week, which was that the SEC had released some guidelines related to insider trading and security breaches. So I don't know if that was a harbinger of things to come or what, but now the news here from The Guardian. Title is Former Equifax Executive Charged with Insider Trading After Data Breach. And this was the first time I'm aware of that a CIO of a company was charged criminally for this sort of thing. So
the allegation here is that he knew about the breach before it was public and sold shares before it went public.
Correct.
And the SEC is alleging that that's insider information, and he traded with the assumption the stock was going to go down in price, and that's not allowed. That's a big no-no.
Correct. And apparently they've already done discovery too, because there's some things referenced in this article that seem pretty damning. Obviously, he's not been convicted, so it's all alleged and whatnot. But according to the article here, there was apparently an email sent about kind of characterizing the breach as an opportunity. I assume that means trading opportunity. And then apparently on the CIO's work computer, conveniently, he apparently searched for terms that would lead one to believe he was trying to figure out if it was a good idea to sell stock. So he was, for instance, apparently searching for information related to the previous Experian data breach and trying to figure out what happened to their stock after their breach. So not the sharpest tool in the shed, if true, right?
This is kind of like when the spouse goes missing and they check the wife's, browser history, and she was searching for terms like how to dispose of a body.
Yes.
It doesn't look good.
Doesn't look good. Doesn't mean he did it, right? But doesn't
Right.
look good. So anyway, obviously, I think it really points to the fact that we have to have very high ethical standards in our industry, and I would say the law enforcement community is starting to catch up with some of this shenanigans that may have been going on in the past. So it's it's
Yep.
pretty clear we got to.
Well, I think the safest thing here is, like we were talking about earlier, set up an automated trading methodology that sells on a regular basis, regardless of what's going on, and then you can claim ignorance.
Yeah, I have to say, now it's a lot. It's a lot of money. No, I mean I'm not. It was not to say that $1 million isn't a ton of money, right? But I'm not sure the amount of money that he made or he profited was worth what is probably about to happen to him. I mean, he ended up apparently netting about $117,000 more than he would have otherwise if he would have waited until after the breach was made public. He would have made about $117,000 less, which is, hey, it's a lot of money, right? But
but hindsight's 2020.
Yes, that's right.
Right, and in general, the SEC doesn't back down on these things. So
no,
I'm assuming he'll be giving up a lot of those trading profits and more.
I would think so. Anyway, moving on to our next story, comes from Gizmodo. Title is U.S. Power Company fined $2.7 million over security flaws impacting critical assets. Now, when I first started reading this, I was getting ready for, I was like strapping myself in, getting my APT helmet on, getting ready for a really good story. And
wait, question: what exactly were you strapping yourself into?
Well,
do you have like some weird
no.
fetish chair that you read these stories in?
It's my APT chair.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. I'm going to be putting some pictures together, I think, mocking up my view of your APT chair.
Okay.
Carry on.
All right. So anyway, as it turns out, apparently Chris Vickery, our favorite, apparently we've talked about this in the past, but holy cow, talk about somebody that can make a career out of just snooping around Amazon looking for unsecured S3 buckets. And,
seriously.
Anyway, so Chris Vickery apparently found, I guess this was back in 2016, when he was with his previous employer, he found, now allegedly, right, there's the actual company hasn't been named by the regulators here, but it seems pretty clear that it was likely Pacific Gas and Electric. They had posted information. I guess it was a database, not really clear what form it was in, but it was sitting out in a unprotected S3 bucket and contained a ton of information about their internal IT systems. 47,000 details of over 47,000 PG&E computers, virtual machines, servers, other devices. Apparently, according to the regulators report, it also included things like usernames and hashed passwords too. So apparently this is also something that I've not seen in the past, at least in action like this. The regulators, the power regulators here in the U.S., I assume that's like NERC, fined this company, which is apparently, but not certain to be, Pacific Gas and Electric, $2.7 million, right? So that's kind of real money.
That's pretty healthy.
That's real money for not clicking the right checkbox in your Amazon control panel.
Well, this is why I said every InfoSec organization should set up a unsecured S3 bucket at company.com email address and just monitor it, because inevitably somebody in the organization is going to start up some shadow IT, dump a bunch of data out there that they don't want. It seems to be the way things go. The bad guys don't even need to come break into our companies anymore. They just need to wait until somebody in our organization leaks something inadvertently silly to an S3 bucket that isn't properly secured.
Yes. No, we talked about this in the past, but I think to Amazon's credit, I think they're starting to try to take steps to make it more difficult for people to shoot themselves in the foot. But
it's to be clear, it's not Amazon's fault, but they're catching the bad press for it. So.
Oh yeah.
They're trying to fix it.
But point of the story is it's that this stuff can have real consequences. And a great point at the bottom of this article was that apparently PG&E's IT department, when Vickery contacted them initially, they tried to claim that the data was fake. was fake data,
and then retracted.
And then they retracted it. Yeah.
So it became unfake.
Yeah. So all I can say is don't do that.
Yeah, be real sure.
Own it, because you could have us talking about you on our show.
Fortunately, neither of us use PG&E, so they won't be turning off our power.
That's also true. Hopefully, we never move to the northwest.
Well, I think that's out of the cards now. Good job, Jerry.
Good point. All right, moving on to our next story. Comes from CSO Online. Title is, "Are your employees unwittingly invalidating your cyber liability insurance?"
This is a fascinating concept that I can see getting far more interesting as insurance companies start going, you've invalidated your contract, so we're not going to pay out because, well, the story will get into that, but this will be interesting.
Yeah. So the whole I'll kind of get to the punchline up front, and then we'll talk about some of the details. But basically the point of the article is that most all insurance policies, your car insurance, your homeowner's insurance, whatever insurance you're considering, has certain requirements in there and certain limitations. And so if you burn your house down intentionally, well, your insurance company is probably not going to pay you. And in some cases, if you leave your car unlocked and things get stolen out of it, they may not cover the contents that were stolen, and so on and so forth. And so the point here is that you really, when you purchase as an organization, when you purchase cybersecurity insurance, you really need to clearly understand those kinds of limitations and restrictions that are set out in the policy, and then embed those concepts into your management system.
So for your 300 people in your IT department, your 70 people in your security department are going to have to know this stuff. So what you're going to have to build is another compliance department that oversees those departments to make sure that you're not invalidating your insurance.
Yes, that's right. Another audit team. Absolutely.
It's going to get crazy.
Cyber insurance audit team. So, the article kind of points or pokes at different things that may cause problems. So, for instance, your insurance policy may cover data breaches, but those data breaches may only be covered if they're on infrastructure that you own in your inside your data center. And if some enterprising employee decides that they're going to move their data to an unsecured S3 bucket, that may not actually be covered because it's A, in the cloud, and B, was a kind of a gross oversight. Now, I have to say, I've seen a lot of companies being compensated by their insurance providers lately. That's kind of made me scratch my head and say, man, it doesn't really seem like the insurance company. I mean, they seem like they just rolled over pretty easily and paid out rather than trying to object. So, but I don't know that necessarily what's in the terms of those agreements.
Well, is this perhaps just a reflection of the relative youngness of that industry?
Yeah, possibly. Or
that company that holds the cyber insurance also holds $1 billion in other insurance liabilities with that customer, and they didn't want to piss them off.
Well, that's also very possible too. Yeah.
Not that ever happens, ever. Ever.
Yeah, for sure. So I will say one thing that was a little. The person that wrote this article really didn't have doesn't seem to have a lot of experience in larger companies, because they talk a lot about communicating to the CISO whenever you are collecting data, in different types of data, like personal data such as names, addresses, financial information. You should communicate that to the CISO, and if you're going to implement some automation or digitization of that information, you should notify your CISO. And that probably works in a couple 100-person company, but I don't think that advice really scales. I think more likely in larger organizations, you really need to have those sorts of things embodied in policy. I mean, for better or for worse. I mean, we in security have the endless debate about compliance versus security, and policies kind of seen as an extension of compliance. But I'm here to tell you, security doesn't scale very well.
No. And then it becomes a question of, okay, let's say you codified that in policy, and one of your folks still made a mistake. Does that hurt or help your case for getting a payout?
Well, I mean, again, it depends on the details of your agreement.
Man, you're such a lawyer.
Is it accidental, or was it intentional? Was it an oversight? Was it I think these are the kinds of questions that you really need to ponder with a lawyer looking at either your actual agreement or your prospective agreement for insurance. But the point is, you really need to, especially if you're going to rely on insurance to make you whole in the aftermath of some kind of a breach, you really need to understand the limitation or the limiting factors that would cause them not to pay. They mentioned in the article here, for instance, that some insurance policies require you to notify the carrier before you pay a ransom. In order for the insurance company to reimburse you for the ransom. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of some of the healthcare policies here in the U.S., where you have to call before the health insurance company will pay for your emergency room visit. You have to call to get pre-authorization. My leg is on the floor, disconnected from my body. Can I go to the hospital?
It's a flesh wound.
So
rub some dirt on it, you'll be fine. Your leg's off.
I got 2 legs. You don't need, got a spare, right?
What you do? Bleed on me? Sorry, go on.
Yes. I did find it interesting that the author wrapped in NotPetya into the discussion about ransomware payments, but
look, man, keyword searches matter.
Yeah, that's true.
If you were a journalist, you would understand these things.
Yep.
But in all seriousness, I definitely can see yet another layer of bureaucracy being added into your process controls to make sure you're not violating your cyber insurance policy. And how much fun will that be for us?
Yeah, and I have to say, it's a little unclear to me what the future holds here, because there are some people who really seriously hold the view that in the medium term, insurance companies are really going to be dictating how security works in companies.
I can somewhat buy into that. If it all depends on how the negotiations go and how many payouts they have. They're going to try to limit their risk. Mm-hmm. So I could certainly see them starting to push down that path.
So in the article, the author mentions that you can contact the insurance company for recommendations about security products.
Yeah, I've got it here.
Okay.
Yeah, CISOs, quote from the article, CISOs should work alongside their insurer to find out which products they recommend, as they have a wealth of cybersecurity expertise, and businesses that implement a recommended solution may well benefit from policy cost reductions.
Yeah, AKA joint marketing opportunities between security companies and insurance companies.
Oh,
Yay. Yay.
I
Um,
really struggle with the concept that my insurance company has a wealth of cybersecurity expertise and is best equipped to advise me.
well,
Struggle.
I think there's an opportunity. I mean, maybe a somewhat perverse opportunity for security companies to cozy up to insurance providers and do like joint marketing things, where, hey, Liberty Mutual says, if you buy Carbon Black, you get 5%. I mean, clearly a contrived, made up example, but you can kind of see that sort of thing happening. And is that the best thing for the company? I don't know. But I think in that same quote, the next part was in reference to a centralized monitoring system that it sounded like something that probably doesn't actually exist yet. But to me, the concept was, and I don't know if you have the quote right in front of you, but basically, that conceivably you could install some sort of a compliance monitoring tool.
Yeah. Quote, for instance, using a platform that provides a single point of access to all possible threats could be linked to the insurance policy as a tech add-on to ensure compliance.
Yeah. So I mean, I have a problem with the concept of all possible threats, but if we just get off of that for a second, it reminds me of in the U.S. here we have some of our insurance companies have this little the car insurance companies have this little gadget that you can plug into your ODB2 port on your car, and it'll monitor your driving, and you can conceivably, I guess, get discounts if they don't see erratic driving. I don't know the extent to which they monitor that, but and what they actually monitor. But similar concept, like if you can prove that if you can demonstrate that you're having good, cyber hygiene, then maybe you should get a discount on your premiums. And I know for a fact that, and I don't know if this is still going on or not, but for a long time, some of the companies like BitSight and their brethren were really targeting the insurance companies as a means for vetting the cyber hygiene of their insured customers.
Would you like a 10% discount on your cybersecurity policy? Please link your SIM to our centralized collection node.
There you go. There you go.
Would you like an extra 5%? Send your AV alerts to us too.
Oh, that seems perilous.
It's coming. It's inevitable.
Yeah. I hope you're wrong. Anyway, you're probably right. So moving on. Next story comes from the New York Times, and the title is "A Cyber Attack in Saudi Arabia Had a Deadly Goal. Experts Fear Another Try." And I think we actually talked about this story a little bit last year sometime. This was this was an attack on a company. What was their name? Forget the name. The name. It's a really long name with an odd acronym. But anyway, it's a chemical company in Saudi Arabia that was the victim of an attack last year, and at the time, the attack apparently stopped their production, and it was an attack not on the actual industrial control systems. It was an attack on a separate system, a separate safety control system that is it's kind of like an automated emergency stop capability. Was really thought to be a intrinsically safe is not the right term, right? But a reliable safety net to prevent bad things from happening. And anyway, at the time, this was reported, they knew that the attack was against that safety that safety equipment made by Schneider Electric. But what they didn't realize until, or at least what's not been made public until now, is that apparently the intent of the attack was to cripple that safety equipment in a way that would cause an explosion, or should have caused an explosion, if it allegedly had not been for a defect in the malware that was used. So, you know, and if that had happened, by the way, I think that would have been one of the first, at least that I'm aware of, the first known instances of a, you know, I guess presumably there would have been casualties, right? But a, you know, fatality resulting from a cyber attack like that.
Yeah. So really, what we're finding out here is that power companies and SCADA systems are the original Internet of Things.
That's true.
That everybody's so afraid of.
That is very true.
Yeah. It's interesting and worrying that these sort of things are that reachable. But then we don't know, right? Was this somebody dropped a USB stick in the parking lot that got the initial attack? And, you know, we don't know. But,
yeah, so they do interestingly distinguish this from, and it's, you have to read between the lines, but they do distinguish it between, or from the Stuxnet attack, right? Because they say this did not have a insider component to it, which tells me that, I mean, when I read that, that told me that it wasn't the result of somebody plugging in a USB drive that they found in the parking lot. It probably was the result of, like, you know, either a you know, network-based attack, or somebody clicked on, you know, some funny cat video from the system that is used to secure the company. But, you know, what's I think what's a little scary is we are designing these systems, you know, they characterize the safety system as, you know, believed to be a lock and key operation. Otherwise, you know, what they're trying to say there is that these safety controllers really have to be, you know, physically interacted with in order to change their operation. But apparently that's actually not true. And so it's not clear to me if they exploited, if the attack exploited some kind of unknown vulnerability in this controller and therefore bypassed that perceived, you know, lock and key functionality. But apparently the attack manifested itself as a what appeared to be a component from Schneider Electric on the workstation used to manage this environment. So, you know, it was obviously pretty deliberate. You know, the article goes on to, you know, pretty clearly lay claim to some kind of a nation state actor, which, you know, in this case, you know, probably is true. I mean, but there's no clear attribution on who it was. But, you know, I think the reason that I wanted to really talk about this is that, not that, you know, most of us are going to have to worry about this sort of thing, but that as time goes on, right, this is an odd kind of attack. But if we were to fast forward 5 or 10 years, right, how odd will this actually be? And given the way, you know, given the speed at which technology changes in a corporate environment, i.e. not very fast, right, we should be thinking about this now if we want to stave off attacks that are going to be common in 10 years. That's my point.
And the tough part is most of the stuff is built and not very changeable. I completely agree. This feels like we're inching closer and closer to some sort of life-ending catastrophic event with a hack. Now, I'm not saying, like, you know, we lose the whole eastern seaboard. I'm saying, you know, some explosion in a plant kills 20 people kind of thing.
Absolutely.
It feels like it's inevitable at this point.
Yep.
Which is very unfortunate, obviously.
Yeah, but fear not. But fear not, because our last story for tonight is that the Center for Internet Security released version 7 of the top 20 critical cybersecurity controls. So
I've been waiting for this. In fact, I sit up at night wondering when they're going to release the next update.
Well, I didn't, because they've been spamming me every day for like the past 3 months.
But in all seriousness, this is a good make sure you're hitting the common basics kind of guide, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like the OS top 10 for web apps and CIS critical controls. If you're nailing this stuff, you're probably in decent shape.
Yeah, I mean, all kidding aside, I think very, very highly of the top 20. I think it's a great list. They did change some things this year. For instance, they downgraded secure configurations for hardware and software. That was number 3. They moved that down to number 5, and then they made some kind of tactical changes to the organization of some of the controls. So, for instance, like with whitelisting, they in the version 6, whitelisting was just one large control. They broke it up into 3 or 4 separate controls in version 7. Things like whitelisting applications, whitelisting libraries, whitelisting scripts. And so there's, I would say a lot of it's the same, but some of it's, I think some of it's new. It's intended to be a little more consumable, aligned with kind of current technologies. It just came out today, so I haven't spent an incredible amount of time with it. But one of the things that struck me is, and again, I don't know if I just haven't got there yet, but they don't seem to do a lot yet with with cloud and automation type systems. We talked the last time about the importance of protecting your IT automation systems, and I didn't see a lot of focus on that in this one. That was a little surprising.
Yeah, they mentioned it a few times, but not in specific takeaways. So you'll see references to cloud systems and some of the other controls, but nothing that is oriented towards the cloud itself, which I think may be a miss, because I really do think we as an industry specifically need to start pivoting to learning how to properly configure our cloud environments for built-in granular security.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if nothing else, there needs to be like control number 21, secure your damn S3 buckets. So there you go, CIS, top 21.
And to be fair, as I was educated upon recently, the S3 buckets that we keep stumbling, not we, but the industry keeps stumbling across, are not completely open to the public, but they're open to anyone with any S3 account.
Correct. So you can register for an S3 account, which is free, by the way.
Right.
And then you potentially have access. So
that's true. So did you have more you want to say on that? I had one other thing I want to kind of mention, but I didn't want to get you off that too quick.
No. I guess the only other thing I'll say is, along with the update this time, they actually also released a metrics document, which is pretty cool. So they for each of the controls, and it's for most people who are not familiar with the top 20, there's not actually 20, right? There
Indeed.
are something on the order of about 170 controls, but they're grouped into 20 different domains. And in version 7, they actually produce a spreadsheet that has a metric, so like a question, a metrics question associated with each of the 170 or roughly 170 controls that you can use to judge your, if you were going to use the top 20 controls, you can use those as part of your metrics program, and they give you kind of, some Sigma-based, compliance parameters, which seemed a little odd to me, but good. It seemed seemed pretty good. I guess the other big change is they're aligning the controls now with a couple of different frameworks. That, for instance, all of the controls now map to the cybersecurity, the NIST. Sorry everyone, don't email me. The NIST cybersecurity framework.
Email him.
They have the security function listed there, and there's a couple of other mappings they have to PCI and FISMA. So, good stuff. Give it a look. So that's it.
Cool. The other thing I want to mention was there's some brewing controversy between Facebook and this third-party data analytics company.
Was that Cambridge Analytics? Is that right?
It is indeed. Yeah. Analytica.
Cambridge Analytica. That's right.
Analytica and Facebook. So I'm hesitant to say too much about it because it's early in the scenario, and usually first reports are wrong. But what's really interesting about this one is the big debate going on about whether or not this is a data breach. So there's 50 million, for lack of a better term, records that Cambridge Analytica got access to. And now there's this big debate going on. Is this a breach?
But they, as far as I understand it, they were authorized to have those. Correct. But they were supposed to delete them later, right?
Right. So from what we understand at this point, and take this with a grain of salt, is they harvested the data from Facebook, for lack of a better term, with permission, and then potentially have misused it or done more with it than they should have. And there's this big debate going on whether or not this was a breach or not, or whether or not this was an abuse of trust and permission. So it's at the end of the day, you're already seeing a ton of attorney generals and U.S. Congress and others jumping in. This is an interesting one because when we start really consolidating user records and information into a couple of centralized locations, our risk goes up for misuse and malfeasance in this sort of situation. But of course, the network effect, not to get too buzzwordy, it also goes up. In terms of the more people using a centralized platform, in theory, the more use it is to any one individual. So we have these two competing needs. At the same time, now the InfoSec industry is trying to figure out how to categorize this sort of incident. And I don't think we know yet. So it's been kind of interesting watching this go on. And pairs with the news that potentially, as we mentioned at the top of the show, the CSO, Alex Stamos, may or may not be leaving. He's denying it. Facebook is denying it. New York Times just said he was leaving. Who knows what to believe at this point? It's probably a rough couple of days for the InfoSec team at Facebook. And shout out to them.
I would think so. I mean, shout out to them for sure. I mean, that's got to be a tough job. I mean, they are the lightning rod of the internet, I've got to imagine. And I will say, just to get a little, some pontification, right? That my understanding is that Cambridge Analytica was, they were trying to pair. One of the controversial things was they were trying to pair some data about people who had answered a survey with data of the contacts who that were associated with the person that answered the question, right? To try to infer things about those other people. So, for instance, if let's say, I identify as a Democrat, right, and I answer the survey, right, but you haven't answered the survey, and so they're gonna see the linkage between you and I and make an assertion that, oh well, he's probably a Democrat. That's a crazy hypothetical, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's effectively what they did, and
right.
There's a lot of consternation. And by the way, I think this is actually as much issue as I have with the GDPR. I think this is the thing that the GDPR was really intended to try to manage, was was people trying to do really crazy things with data, processing it in novel ways that may invade people's privacy in kind of deep ways. So
right. It gets complicated in a hurry when you have this much consolidated data. So, this is almost like another reverse supply chain risk.
Yes.
Kind of, sort of.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
We'll have to probably start grappling with this, because I think this will continue. The more we allow third parties and cloud and other stuff to integrate with our data sets, the more I think we've run risks like this, even for smaller companies, even for the average company. What if you're using Salesforce or you're using some offsite payroll company and this sort of problem comes up?
Right.
Not picking on those in particular, just saying those are common services that have a lot of interesting data.
Absolutely.
So anyway, more to come on that, I think, as more develops on that story. Just a quick mention of it, though, since it's popping.
It's topical. That's right.
Much like the ointment on your head.
Hey, now. It's polishing compound. Anyway, that is the show for this evening. Thank you very much for listening. And, don't forget to tell your friends, if you like it. If you don't, just delete it, move on. You can also, if you want to give us internet points, we really love a good rating on iTunes and a good comment. That's always fun. And with that, we will talk again next week. Thank you.
See you guys. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.